Hey everybody, Seth Campbell here with the new Segue Says podcast. Well, this week we're going to go with two modern songs, both of which are very popular. The first of which is Young Folks by Peter, Bjorn, and John, and the second is Shelter by XX. Or is it The XX? I can never remember because they've got an album that's called one thing and then they're called the other. It's either just XX or The XX. It's kind of confusing. But in any case, these two songs are very different from each other, both of which, I guess the primary thing they have in common is that they're both centered around the C major scale, although they don't spend a lot of time on the C major chord. Young Folks is very rhythm-driven, it's pretty fast, it's very upbeat. Shelter is very ethereal, almost rubato, but not quite, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we get to it. You've probably heard both of these on the radio. They're two of the more palatable songs on modern radio. And as a consequence, these two songs and this segue in particular was a staple set opener for me throughout my 13-month tenure playing at Seasons. For any of those of you who came out to see me there, you may remember this. Young Folks is from 2007. It's by Peter, Bjorn, and John. I first heard this song, and I'm not making this up, on one of those TV stations that's basically a radio that you put on in the background and you turn the screen off, but you listen to music, on my uncle's Long Island vacation house, which was quite possibly my favorite place on earth. He's since sold it. Don't know if I've forgiven him for that yet, but so naturally, my memories of this song are fond. I remember hearing and thinking, that's kind of interesting. The arrangement is unusual. As I said, it's very rhythm heavy. There's a whistle in it, and the vocals, there's a lot of reverb on them, and they're not quite in key, which would ordinarily drive me nuts. For those of you who know me, you know how true that is. But it contributes to their sound in a way that it's really not obnoxious at all. I quite like it. It's actually a duet. There's a male singer and a female singer. I have yet to sing this as a duet. Any of my singer friends out there who know and like this song, let me know. I'd love to sing it with somebody sometime. But in the meantime, I'm going to be covering both parts because fortunately they're both in my range. They both sing the same melody. So, it starts off with a whistle. I can't whistle. Not well anyway, so I'm just going to play the whistling part on the piano because that's probably how you'll recognize it. This is a intro, verse, chorus. You know, obnoxious whistling. It's going better than it usually does. The vocals come in, and I can't remember the freaking words. If I told you things I'd done before, told you who I used to be, would you go along with someone like me? I can tell if you knew my story word for word, how to love my history, would you go along with someone like me? This is where it switches singers. I did before and had my share, didn't lead nowhere. I could go along with someone like you. It doesn't matter what we do, where we're going to. That's the second verse, my mistake. We can stick around and see this night through, 'cause we don't care about the young folks talking about the young style. We don't care about the old folks talking about the old style too. We don't care about our own folks talking about our own style. It's all we care about is talking, only me and you. Etc. I won't subject you to any more of my whistling. I actually, just last weekend when I was at the family reunion in Lake Tahoe, heard that on the radio, which was fun. as I said, reaffirms that occasionally you do hear a good song on the radio these days. But that's another debate for another time. In spite of my tripping over the lyrics, I should have demonstrated that well enough for you to recognize it. I take a little pride that those harmonies I was playing in the piano in the chorus, those aren't in the original one. I came up with that as, potential for a duet if I ever do sing it with someone, which I still haven't. But that's my own little bit of egomania out of the side. But apart from that, it's very true to the original. So as you can hear, it's got this really fast beat, and the rhythm is very subdivided. So I realize you can't see it, but I'm drumming on my knee here. So it's a very tempo-driven song. It's very upbeat. Shelter is in many ways the polar opposite, because it doesn't really have drums. It's mainly, I know there's a guitar, there's a lot of synth, there might be some percussion, I can't remember off the top of my head, but if there is, it's very subtle. But the bass and the guitar drive it a lot, and a verse chorus of it goes like this. The great thing is it starts, the vocals are the first thing to come in, and that'll be important for our segue. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I find shelter in this way, undercover, hide away. Can you hear when I say I have never felt this way? Maybe I had said something that was wrong. Can I make it better with the lights turned on? Now, the way I learned this from one of my Berkeley ensembles, and we were doing sort of an experimental arrangement that Marty Walsh, professor and good friend of mine, came up with. And so here we differ a little from the original version, and this is the way I played it, particularly since I played a solo piano at a piano bar gig. You wanted to keep it, somewhat moving, so the second verse came out a little more funky than the original. Ended up doing something like this. Can it be? Was I there? Felt so crystal in the air. So, my version, and the version I play, because it mainly comes from the ensemble classes, the arrangement's a little different, but all the things we need for the segue are still intact. Now, like I said, these are in the same scale. Both of them end up resolving to either A minor or F, depending on where you feel the center is, because it could be up for debate with these songs, because a lot of the progressions are cycled. So, you have the way to end Young Folks. You can end on either C or A minor. As a matter of fact, I would occasionally, I've done both for the purposes of different segues. For this one, I like to end on the C, because the C major is the second chord of Shelter. So it feels a little more continuous, going to A and then starting Shelter. Now, here's how this is done. You have the last, talking only me and you. Now, if you want, you can extend the vocals, which is the way I tended to do it. Talking only me and you. Talking only me and you. Talking only me and you. Talking only me and... That's how I like to end it. If you want, you could go instrumental as well. Talking only me and you. as I said, the vocals of Shelter start before anything else does. They have a 2-beat anticipation, or you'd probably call it 1 beat. You'd probably be counting 1 and 2 and 3. So, this one, there's less, I don't even know if there's a word, segue-ness to this one, because it's more just finishing one song and starting the next one before the first one is completely ended. So, really you don't have to do much. Just end Young Folks and start singing Shelter before this chord fades. And like I said, because this is the second chord of Shelter as well, it'll feel sort of continuous. And here is how that would sound. All we care about is talking, talking only me and you. 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 You can throw in the you or not. I find shelter in this way. Undercover, hide away. Can you hear when I say, etc.? And you've got Shelter going. So, without really stopping and breaking the movement, you've slowed everything down, calmed it down, brought everything to a different level, and you're in the middle of Shelter before anyone realizes what's happening. Now, I like to do it this way. As I said, I like to do this as the opener of a set, and I'll explain why shortly, but I want to show you that you can do this in the opposite direction. Because Shelter ends with this, maybe I had said something that was wrong. Can I make it better with the lights turned on? It ends on a C. However, the way my ensemble did it, and I guess here's a little more egomania, I believe it was my suggestion because I thought it would sound really cool, is to rather than to go to the C chord, go to the F chord. Because when I first heard this song, having never heard it before, I kept expecting it to resolve to the F. And it never did, but I thought that'd be a cool way to end it. So, maybe I had said something that was wrong. Can I make it better with the lights turned on? I like it. I think it adds a little more flavor than just ending on the C. But of course, F is the first chord in the riff cycle progression of Young Folks. And so this is another example of something I've done frequently in these videos, and I have mentioned is great for segue technique, is you hold in the right hand while start something going on in the bass. So basically, as soon as you hit that F chord to end Shelter, you start playing Young Folks in the bass, like this. Can I make it better with the lights turned on? Build it up however long you want, or just go right into the vocals right there. Now, either way works fine, and I hugely encourage you to do whatever works for you. However, if you're starting a set with this segue, as I mentioned I would do nearly every show at Seasons for a while, I would start one of the last couple sets with this one. The reason you want to start with Young Folks for that is when you're coming out of nothing, out of no music, you want to grab the audience right away. And there are different ways to do this. Sometimes doing a really power, power-driven, a song with very strong chords, heavy guitars, like Fleetwood Mac does The Chain, of course, is a great set opener because you got all these power chords and strong backbeat and everything. Or you can go with something really upbeat to set the tempo fast. And I credit Billy Joel for inspiring this segue, because on a number of his live records in recent years, he'll start with, and he starts in keys lower than this now, but I only know them in the original, so bear with me. He'll start with Angry Young Man, or Prelude Angry Young Man, which of course is very fast. It's very fast, full of crazy instrumentation, crazy piano, drums, everything. And it ends on the same note. And then I've heard him talk about this in interviews. He says, from here, okay, you've got the crowd started, you've got everybody worked up and ready to go. Now you need to pull them in and settle things down so that they'll be attentive going forward. So what he'll often do then is from here he'll just start playing My Life, which is one of his more moderate songs. It's not a ballad by any means, but it's not a hugely crazy rocker. Longtime viewers of my Segue podcast will remember this song from the Goodbye Blue Sky Segue. But he talked about the way that works. You catch him with the crazy fast one, and then you reel him in with something a little more moderate. Now, obviously, Shelter is a little more on the mellow side compared to moderate than My Life. Of course, that's why it helps that I had this sort of funky edit to it. Feel free to steal that, incidentally. But that, to me, is why this one works so well as a set opener, because you've got young folks, which you can extend and jam instrumentally over, which I'd often do. Depending on how you want to play, you can make this very high energy, or you can just, do moderately upbeat, up-tempo. And then you end. And so now the audience is high energy, they're ready to go, but you got to reel them in. I find shelter. And it gives everyone a chance to breathe. Say, just take a deep breath, readjust, and get ready to go forward. And then you'll probably do something a little more up-tempo after that, or something with a story behind it, because it's easier after a more moderate number to get people to listen to a song that has a story behind it. And you'll see Billy Joel do this, for example, if you ever see him live. He does that all the time. So, that is a little more audience psychology set list theory, which I am in no way licensed to dispense, but this is just based on my experience. So, take it however you will. Hopefully it helps. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this. I will see you next week.